Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. And man, oh man, the NFL draft is right around the corner. In fact, we can officially say it is next Thursday night, starting with the first round, 8 o'clock. And Adam, we're going to have a lot of coverage of the draft next week, especially. We're going to have our normal podcast both on Monday, our Thursday morning pod. We will have even more, like the last bit of empty the notebook type stuff for everything. We're going to also do for Thursday, it'll come out Thursday, a NFL draft preview show. And then we'll do intel on the picks when they come out Thursday night when they pick. Andrew DeCheco will be involved. And you know, people who are new to our platform will see we do kind of a comprehensive intel, immediate stuff, live streams all throughout the draft. And people who are familiar with us know how much we put into it. So I really look forward to next week. But we spent a lot of time so far going through potential picks there at the first round, and we'll continue to do that with the Eagles slated to pick 22nd overall. But we thought for this particular podcast, let's be a little bit more informative, give a little bit more intel on what might happen after the first round, because the Eagles obviously have 2 second-round picks, and Howie Roseman, as you heard, Adam, he said he loves to make trades at this time.
I know, geez.
Favorite thing.
So this is what, year 7 doing this, our with our company and these shows.
6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, how he ruins it when he trades out. Now, obviously the AJ Brown trade, boy, that was a smart one. That worked out pretty well. That was worth giving up a 1 and a 3. But sometimes we think we have it nailed, and they trade up or trade down. We're like, screw it. You know, we met. You know, we got screwed. So
right.
And Howie got super excited. How many times did he say he loved to make trades? 3 times in that press conference this week.
It was almost like a sordid infatuation with it, the way he joked about it so much. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I like to make trades. You know, his eyes got really wide.
I know. He loves action. We get it. We understand. But anyway, yeah. So 1 week from today, it's Thursday night. Yeah, next Thursday night. In fact, what we'll do is that show that drops Thursday morning, 6 a.m. Eastern. We don't just empty a notebook. We go, here are the players we've heard. Here's your players they're keying on. We'll see what happens. Because as Cubs have told us over the years, the players they like, when something happens before them, they go elsewhere. This happened big time in 2014 when the Eagles said there were 5 players they really wanted. Their board got blown up, and that's when they took Marcus Smith.
That's right. And we went down that memory lane last podcast. You should listen to it if you haven't had a chance to yet. A couple of other things you should listen to, but first, I want to tell you, Inside the Birds is presented by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. I hope everyone who just loves the draft, or who loves the Eagles, or who loves their NFL teams, and understands that 75% of 53-man rosters are made up of guys who are drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and rookie free agents. Everybody who's into that should listen to the interviews that Andrew DeCheco has been doing. It's called Draft Dreams. It's on our podcast and YouTube platforms. He's done it with by the time people listen to this, I think there'll be 10 interviews in total up, and maybe 2 more left to go, with a variety of big school, small school prospects. Some that are going to be drafted day 2, some day 3, some will be rookie free agent pickups. All will be in a camp. We're fairly positive of that, and all will have a chance to recognize their dreams. And Andrew has done so many this year, Adam, that I'm convinced that the Eagles are going to wind up with one of these guys, because he's done so many, and many of them are guys that he knows that the Eagles have talked to, and he specifically also chose guys at positions the Eagles would be looking at, like corner and safety and linebacker and wide receiver.
That's awesome. Yeah. In fact, it's on not just YouTube, what you could see and hear. It's also on all of our podcasting platforms. So, and they always drop like all of our shows at 6 a.m. Eastern. So no matter what time zone if you're in the West Coast, it's 3 a.m. for you farmers, and 6 a.m. Eastern as you going to work. So download it however you consume, you could get them, and only through us, through Inside the Birds. We love it. We're loving having Andrew on draft night. We'll have him with us, I believe. So that'll be great.
Yep.
And and then the big one drops our 1 round. We only do 1 round. We do the entire 32 picks, where the 3 of us go back and forth. We make our picks. We give you the reasons why. Also, we'll do the Eagles then, and we'll give you the intel on what specifically on the teams that we really know pretty well. We'll go, okay, here's what they're thinking going into it. So if you're not just an Eagle, we know that not all Eagles fans listen. There are Cowboys fans listening, Commandos fans, Giants fans. So we'll give you what we know on those teams as well.
Yeah, that's our annual Inside the Birds first round NFL mock draft that will come out Monday, featuring myself, Adam, and Andrew DeCecco. Always look forward to that. Always one of our most listened to podcasts every year. As far as other things that you should catch and listen to on our Patreon platform, Adam last night entertained on the Discord channel, answering a lot of questions, dropping a lot of intel. A lot of people want to know about the NFL draft, and Adam had a lot of good stuff on the Discord channel for our Patreon members. And then, of course, on Wednesday, the night before the first round of the draft, we'll do our final NFL draft Ask ITB live stream with our Patreon members, where we'll again have a chance to drop a lot of early intel for those who subscribe. That's patreon.com/inside the birds to get that great content. All right. Couple of things before we get into day 2 and day 3, guys. Adam, big extension that we said was coming ever since, I don't know, the start of the offseason.
Yeah.
Finally happened. Eagles agreed to an extension with DeVonta Smith, which it's been an offseason of a lot of extensions, from Smith to Landon Dickerson, all 3 of the special teams guys on the field goal, right? The kicker, the punter, and the long snapper. This has been this is an underrated but essential part of quote unquote free agency, retaining your own. And Adam, when you look at the wide receivers that are up for extensions in the next 12 to 16 months, this deal that the Eagles signed Smith to will probably look very team friendly in about 6 to 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, and it also helps a guy like T. Higgins, because see, here T. Higgins is exactly like DeVonta Smith, or DeVonta's a better football player, but he's 1A to Jamar Chase's 1, where DeVonta is a high-end 1A to A.J. Brown, who's their 1. So now 3 years, $75 million. We haven't got the breakdown yet, but now any team knows for a high-end number 2, really a 1A, you now know what the money is now with Jamar Chase. He's looking for $30 million a year, if not more. Him and Justin Jefferson are going to want a minimum of 30. They're going to want to beat Tyreek Hill's deal of $30 million a season. So that's that. Yeah, we knew this was coming. It was no secret. Eagles are I don't understand this. I'll never understand this. Why the Cowboys bleeping wait so long is beyond me. It's stupid. It's bad business. You get such a discount when you get deals done early.
Right.
I don't understand why teams don't copy this.
Right. Because think about if, let's say the Cowboys didn't wait. Let's say they had already signed CeeDee Lamb to something in that 25 to 30 million range. And let's say other guys signed. Then the Eagles are now looking at DeVonta Smith and have to pay him somewhere in the neighborhood that those guys are making. Maybe not as much as a CeeDee Lamb, but right in that category. So it saves them down the long road. As long as you look, there's risk involved. We saw it. It happens. Carson Wentz is one example. There are others. But if you look at most of the Eagles extensions, especially for first rounders, they usually turn out to be guys who are consequential, important, and see it through most of that second contract, and it saves them a lot of money.
Yeah, I would have to go through. We're not talking about extensions for veterans like Alshon Jeffrey. With the last one missed, that was a miss. But just talking about the guys they drafted, their hit rate is significantly strong on getting them right. This is what you're alluding to, doing these early. Joe Banner was telling us that before, that you don't always get them right. Like you back then when Joe started doing them, remember it was called the Joe Banner rule. It was just 2 years, and then agents and players complained, so the NFLPA and they're in a later deal with the owners. That was the thing. They changed it from 2 years to 3 years for drafted players, but they always have a good hit rate on extending players. They just do. And you know why? Because you should know after 3 years whether you want to extend a player or not. You shouldn't need anymore. You should know whether it's not going to work, whether the guy's going to be a bust, or it clearly doesn't look right, or when you nailed it. And DeVonta Smith, geez, the first day of practice and training camp, they nailed it. I mean, Bill Polian told us, so there's sometimes when you, Hall of Fame general manager, you know it when you're around the player very early. And DeVonta Smith was one of those rare players, those first round picks where you're around him, you go, oh wow, I think we got this right, and it's only for a couple weeks.
Yeah,
they kind of knew it when they got it, and what a football player.
Yeah, he checks all the boxes. He'd be one of the very, like, if you gave me like name some guys you'd be shocked if they just fell off the face of the earth and did not get better or replicate their season. He would be among my top 5 guys. He's had it all ever since he was in high school and college and has performed at the highest level on every stage. So there would be no reason to think that this contract will not be worth its weight. Also, I had fun on InsideTheBirds.com. I did a top 10 touchdowns that DeVonta Smith has caught in his Eagles career in 3 years. I ranked them the 10 best touchdown catches, and I put little videos in them to show each one. I had a lot of fun with it, and it made me remember how good of a contested catch guy he is, Adam, for a guy who is known as the Slim Reaper and only 160 some odd pounds, and just how much of how his long stride, he's got better speed than you would think. I mean, he sets up corners with his footwork. There's just not that many things he's not very high level or elite at.
Remember the catch against Washington? Was it 2 years ago? The one over the middle at Washington.
Yep.
He got nailed, and he only missed one play, and I'm like, oh, he might not come back, and he's back like pretty much immediately. I'm like, oh my God, how does he do it? He's so slight. Who came up with the Slim Reaper nickname? Do we know? I'm just curious.
That is a great question. I do not know the answer to that.
That's the best thing I've ever heard. Like, as soon as I heard, I go, oh my God, that's so good. Like, give that dude a raise, But anyway,
better than Skinny Batman. Which isn't bad, but that's only
pretty good.
Because AJ is Swole Batman, and that's better.
Right, Swole Batman. What did Kelsey call himself? Fat Batman? Is that what he called?
Something like that.
That's funny. But anyway, yeah, he's a special football player, boy. And why the hell Howie didn't go to Alabama years ago to that school and start drafting players? I don't know why he ignored it. But did he nail Dickerson and Smith? My God, why the hell didn't he go there earlier? It's weird.
Good question. I was reminded doing an interview that the Eagles did draft a player from Georgia a whole while ago. It was Brandon Boykin from the 4th round when Chip Kelly picked him to play slot corner.
You said Georgia, no, but I'm talking about Bama.
No, Bama. I know. I was just because we always linked the SEC. Remember, for a long time he wasn't even drafting guys from SEC.
And no Georgia, right? No, you're right. You're right. No, in fact, and it's just funny. Why did he OD on Georgia and Alabama? I have no idea, but you just said it. You kind of can't go wrong with the SEC with an asterisk. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but I don't see any exceptions with Jalen Carter. Now, again, I know he faded late, but he's a stud in talent. Mm-hmm. We know what the off-the-field history, so he's got to do what he's supposed to. But obviously, with DeVonta Smith and Landon Dickerson, you can't do much better than that. And I got to give the Eagles medical staff credit. We haven't really talked about this, but it just made me think as you were speaking. Part of why they got it right with him was they thought, despite all the knee problems, based on their information, and this is important, you don't always get it right when you're making bets on players with medical histories. They got it right. Doesn't mean he can't get hurt tomorrow, but just they thought he'd be able to make it. And I know why he wasn't drafted in the first round because of the injury history, the knee. Mm-hmm. But man, that is a great job of evaluation. Obviously, Howie gets the credit, and he should. But kudos to the medical staff and the rehab staff. They've done a phenomenal job with him.
100%. All right, let's turn the page on this and we'll finish it off. Extensions. This is a big upcoming year for 3 guys in particular. Nakobe Dean, who's entering year 3. Cam Jurgens is entering year 3. And the biggest of them all, Jordan Davis, also entering year 3. All 3 of these guys, if they start 17 games, if they play well, if any of them make the Pro Bowl, they're all in line to be extended after year 3 if they prove themselves. But, I think the Eagles at this point would be happy if 2 of the 3 make it. All 3 is great. One of the 3 would not be a good indication of that draft for the Eagles.
In fact, I would add this with Jordan Davis. His 5th-year option is due next May.
Mm-hmm.
So the decision will be made on his future after this season. It's very simple.
Yeah. Pivotal season. Absolutely.
You won't have to guess. These extensions are so easy to call, especially with this team, because Howie rarely, but no one's perfect, but when they get it right with the player, everyone watching knows this with Howie and their front office and ownership. When they get it right, Jeffrey Lurie's great because he'll spend the money, as we all know. Like, you draft a player, you develop, and you extend. That's what they've done for 30 years, really. Now, he didn't have anything to do with Reggie White's. It was Norman Brayman when Reggie walked, but they treat their players well. You saw their grades from the NFLPA. And Jeffrey will address any complaints that the players have. They just treat their players well. And when they identify players, man, they make smart bets. Again, they don't always get them right. I'm sure you could go through the last 20 years, particularly since Howie became the GM, where they extended players when it didn't work. No, they rolled over Nelson Aguilar's $10 million, and he actually did well, his 5th-year option, but they didn't extend him.
Right. That is correct.
That was smart.
True indeed. All right. Before we go on to the round two, day three, guys, is there anything on first rounders that you wanted to go through just to
Oh,
that you got?
the only thing we'll do when we do our mock draft for Monday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern, also on our Wednesday show, and also on our pre-draft show, we'll release our list of the first round targets. But what I would tell you, I just got this like 1 hour before we were taping the show. It's my opinion, based on the people I've spoken with, that there are about 16 to 18 first round grades from clubs. I know it varies from team to team. I get that. There's some probably 14, and we'll release this list next week, but that's because I have to kind of firm it up. But it sounds like to me 16, 18 players. And I would lean more towards 16 players. So that's because we look at this every year and it's important. 32 players will be drafted because you have to, but only true first round grades are 16 to 18.
Yep.
And you could probably figure out some of them. A couple of them are kind of surprising to me, but I'm going to firm it up. But that's the number that we're working with right now.
Yeah, and we'll be working really hard the next few days. I gotta say, I was just speaking to someone before we were on air too, and there are a couple guys that we have talked about on this podcast and who are considered first round who I'm getting what I would say is inconsistent information on, which is not odd. Everybody sees players differently, but then off the field stuff comes into play, medicals come into play, and all of a sudden something you thought was good or there is not there. And so I look forward to, you and I, we're used to that. We know that happens, but we got to make sure all that stuff gets firmed up before our last two pods and stuff.
With Letu, I mean he's the wild card for the draft. He can go as early as 9 or 10, and he could drop to the 20s. If you notice, a lot of Letu's visits for teams picking in the 20s because they know he might drop. And you just talked about it in passing. You could talk to 32 teams. Their grades on medicals could be completely different. It's an inexact science. Look, the Eagles didn't have a round grade on Metcalf because of his neck.
Right.
The Seahawks had a good enough grade. They drafted him in the second round. They got it right. So you just don't know from team to team how they're going to grade it.
Wouldn't you agree character also fills in, because there's various degrees of how teams look at character, and there's various degrees of what some consider good or not great character. Some of it is football character compared to off the field character. And I'll give a quick example. Last year, the cornerback from Oregon who went to the Patriots, Christian Gonzalez.
Yes.
Right. Great kid. Nobody ever said bad kid, but they wondered about the toughness in him. There was a timidity to him that some teams didn't like, and some teams didn't. They looked at the tape and said, yeah, but he's a talented kid and he's as good as anybody else out there. And that's the kind of information right now that we're parsing through as we get ready to really finalize all of our intel. So look forward to getting deeper into that next week when it's all time to wrap it up. All right, we'll get into these guys in round two, round three, day three. First, we're going to hear a word from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right. So the best way to do this, Adam, is just to break it up into position. We'll go through certain positions we know the Eagles look into or value, and then we'll talk about guys who they've put work in or what we heard at these positions and guys that are likely to go in, on the second day or maybe even later. So let's start with the offensive line. Because the Eagles have done a lot of work on offensive linemen in this draft, which is always a good indication that at this point, would you be surprised if in their first three picks, one of them was not an offensive lineman?
Yes, I would be surprised if they don't. Because they're down 3 linemen from last season. Signed Matt Hennessy, who right now will be the top backup interior lineman. They have very little experience of backup tackle. Raven Clark is the one experienced guy. Fred Johnson, but he's a one position guy. Raven Clark could play 3 left and right tackle and guard, but you'd rather have him at tackle. It's okay depth. It's not great. Jack Driscoll really provided some good depth for them. So yeah, and plus I'm always careful when you see that. Well, Tyler Steen's lining up as the starter right guard in in April. Well, that doesn't mean anything. They haven't even had the draft yet. I don't. I'll buy it when it actually happens in week 1.
Yeah.
Let's get through the draft before we give Tyler Steen the job. I know he's had a good offseason so far. Let's hold off, because we warned people before training camp started last season. Doesn't have a technique down. Be careful saying he's the starter. And he wasn't. There was actually never a competition in training camp. They
Right.
handed the job to Juergens a little early, which is surprising. And
Yeah.
it turns out to be a good decision.
On the flip side, it's not even OTAs. Terrell Edmonds was a first-team safety until literally the last
yeah.
week before the season started. so
And he
yeah,
got
you can't
benched.
jump to too many. Yeah, yeah. then
Oh,
he
what's
got
his?
benched.
And Justin Evans was the starter, right? Over him, or
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
Justin Evans and Reed Blankenship.
yeah. So be careful with that stuff.
All right, so a couple of interior offensive linemen that the Eagles have really put some work into, we've been told and we know is one is I think you even mentioned him on a recent podcast, an offensive guard from TCU named Brandon Coleman, and there's also a guard from Kansas State, Cooper Beebe, who has played both all three, left tackle, left guard, and right tackle at Kansas State. These are some interesting guys.
So Brandon Coleman, we know we were told he had a visit. We're also told from other clubs that he's a multi-position player. He's going to go a lot higher than the public thoughts, as one source told us. He goes, the draft experts don't have him. He goes, any draft. This one person we said that to us last week. That he goes, he doesn't. The guy says, listen, I don't really pay attention to what you guys do a lot when you talk. But the guy goes, look. He goes, we think in the NFL that this kid will be a starter year 1 and should go in rounds 2 to 3. Could sneak in the back of round 2. Now, how do the Eagles feel about him? We don't know what their grade is on him, but we know they like him. They had him in for a visit. Here's what I know. Jeff Stoutland, we've talked about this now for 6 years, loves positional versatility. He projects to be a guard tackle, a guard right tackle, to be specific. The guy, Eagles had him in, and you know what? He certainly would not project to be a backup. Starters are projected by draft in rounds 1 through 3. You don't draft a guard. You don't draft a guy in the 3rd round. Don't think he won't compete for a starting job. Now, 4th round, different story. Right. First 3 rounds, they got to compete for a starting job at some point on the rookie contract.
Yeah, and if it's top 50, because they pick 50 and 53rd, you got to think that if that guy would even have a leg up on the competition, depending on how he comes into camp and plays.
Oh. By the way, if they drafted him, he's starting over Steen. I mean, they could say whatever they want, but you don't draft a guy if they draft him in the 2nd round, I'd bet you $50 he starts over Steen. But again,
100%.
It's just before the draft right now. We'll see what they do.
Yeah.
I know they want Steen to start. You and I know this, but let's just see what they do.
Yeah. Now that would be both Brandon Coleman and Cooper Beebe from Kansas State, who has also played multi-positions, left tackle, left guard, right tackle. They've also looked into a guy from Washington. We've talked a lot about Troy Fautanu, who is projected to. He played left tackle at Washington. He could play right tackle. Some people think he's athletic enough to play guard, but on the other side of him at Washington at right tackle was Roger Rosengarten, another guy who could be a 2nd, 3rd round guy. He ran a 4.92. Adam at 6'5", 308. We know that when an offensive lineman runs a fast 40, it gets the Eagles' attention. Jason Kelsey certainly did. Cam Juergens certainly did. And when an offensive tackle does it, Lane Johnson, I think, even ran a decent 40 for his size. It's going to get the Eagles' attention.
Yeah, he's I'm looking at my round projection from the information we have. It looks like late 3rd round is where he's supposed to go. So if he got drafted there by Philly, certainly could see him competing for a starting job at some point, because you don't draft. There's a thinking you never draft backups in the 3rd round, or at least thinking they're going to be a backup. They may wind up being a backup, but you don't draft a guy to specifically be a backup in the 3rd round. So that's an interesting name there, I would say, on the offensive line. The kid from Yale, I don't know how to say his last name. I know it's Kieran Amajide. I don't know how to say it. He's a left tackle.
I think you actually were I think it's Amagajide. Yeah.
Okay. Amagajide. Yeah. I'm not totally sure. We'll look it up. So the Eagles had a combine interview with him. The question with him is he just a left tackle? You know, the Eagles are super big on versatility. I'm very interested to see how clubs see him. We'll work on that, but I'm just interested because he's long. He's been a great story of development. He's 6'5" and 3. His combine size 6'5" and 3/8. Long arms 77 and 0.8. But no, I'm sorry, 77. That's his height.
Uh-huh.
His arm length is ridiculous. 36 and an eighth is not historic, but it's way up there.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, I
I'm
think,
telling you, this is a vintage Eagles analytics guy for day
crazy.
3. Played at Yale, like you could see him be.
Shouldn't go past the third round, I wouldn't think.
Wow, you think? Okay, well, I guess I just think the Yale background might knock him down a little bit.
Well, you know what though? He's long. He's a really good kid. He's athletic. You see now, it's a funny story about Alukin, the linebacker from who's made a ton of money. He was so not recruited by agents for the 18 draft. No agents really wanted him. He found one or two that liked him. And now he's one of the better inside backers in the league. So you say Yale, I get it, the thought process. How good could he be if he played at Yale? He's probably going to be a doctor or something, but the kid's really good, and I wouldn't discount it. Look, that kind of length is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Because Kyle Duggar went to Lenoir-Rhyne, and where did he go in the second round or for late first for the Patriots? I forget what it was. Second, right? Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. It's when you find an offensive lineman with tantalizing measurables. Sometimes the tape takes a back seat to just the overall prospectability. So I could see that happening. Two other guys that interest the Eagles. They had a visit from Zach Zinter from Michigan. Now, remember, he broke his leg against Ohio State. A lot of times you bring a guy in just to see, you might be interested in, but it's also for you're wondering about his medicals. You want to take a look at him, get to know him, especially if he doesn't have a chance to work out at his combine or a pro day. But obviously a lot of experience there. 42 starts at Michigan. That's Zach Zinter. Guy who had a combine interview was UConn's Christian Haynes. I've heard day 2 for him. It might even be mid to late second round. Some people see him as, so he's another interesting guy. Connecticut. Who would have thought Connecticut putting out all these tackles, right? Christian Haynes, Kiran Amaji from Yale. Gotta love it.
Yeah, the UConn's had some guys drafted over the years, so
they have.
The Eagles specialize in these type of guys that go in rounds 2 through 4, particularly 3 and 4. Over the years. Now we'll see about Steen. Didn't get off to a good start, but look, you got to go a couple more years to put the grade in. Yeah, there's some good name. Yeah, there's a kid, Travis Glover.
Yeah,
was supposed to visit. He's from Georgia State. Not exactly a football powerhouse, by the way.
No, but a 5-year starter, so a lot of good experience there.
Yep.
Yeah, I think as we understand, he was supposed to visit, but then wound up getting canceled. But the Eagles definitely know about him.
Late, I was told. Wait, I was just going to add much later than people. Well, again, it only takes one team to draft a guy early,
right?
But the level of competition's the problem with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told third day for him. Now it could be fourth round, but I know he's got a lot of hype in some scouting circles and some draft analysts. But it's just the level of competition. But you just talked about it. 5-year start is important. That's pretty awesome.
Very much so. All right, let's move on to pass catchers, wide receivers, tight ends. Before we talk day 2 or day 3, you think the Eagles might take a wide receiver first round? You getting any vibe?
Listen, I've learned my lesson with this particular team. And I'm sure the fans, everyone watching who's an Eagles fan, will never forget when Hurts was drafted. They probably were shocked. I would not be shocked because of AJ Brown's contract. We've been talking about this the entire offseason. We're not saying he won't be with the Eagles in 25.
True, not
just
shocked.
His cap and cash is so high for 25. And remember, it was a backloaded contract and it fluffed the deal up. But, if I'm AJ and if he blows it up again this season, if I'm him, I want a new contract. I mean, what else could you ask for? The guy's been incredible. What a trade. I mean, and Howie's not one to walk away from a player like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he's Reddick, who was turning 30. AJ, knock on wood, continues to stay healthy. He turns just 27 somehow in June. I don't know how. Seems like he's been in the league for like 15 years, but
it does.
I
think if it happens, it's because a lot of the guys that they had rated as first rounders were off the board, and maybe there was no trade down. So you just take the best available player, and if it happens to be a wide receiver, it's a wide receiver.
No, what I was gonna add on to your point, that's been in my wheelhouse, and we mentioned Marcus Smith. Where the Eagles screwed up in 2014 is you can't just rely on if your board gets blown up, that, well, we have this trade worked out. But what if what like, I remember in 2019, I don't have it in front of me exactly what the scenario was, but we were told that they had a trade worked out with the Jets. The Jets wanted Mecole Hardman. Ironically, they got him years later with another general manager, but they wanted Hardman, and the Jets wound up backing out because I think I have to look it up. I think the Chiefs might have traded up ahead of them and drafted him the
They
second
did
round.
one spot ahead of the Eagles.
Okay, well, okay, there you go. What the case may be is the Jets backed out, and they kind of got stuck. Although they claim then how much they wanted JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Didn't work out. So you have to have every scenario, and this is why trade calls are made for starting 4 weeks. We were told they're done starting 4 weeks, and they firm it up like a week or so before the draft. No team should ever be on the clock in the first round not having stuff worked out. If their board gets blown up, it's ridiculous. It should never happen.
Definitely. All right, so let's say they don't take wide receiver in the first round, but they're looking at maybe second or third, a guy that visited them. This guy is really fascinating, not just because of his dimensions, but the way the Eagles seem to be already stockpiling guys who are tweener wide receiver tight ends, right? Is Johnny Wilson from Florida State. He had a visit with the Eagles. He's got the body of a tight end at 6'6", 231. But he played wide. He played both, but I believe he was mostly wide receiver his last year here at Florida State.
Oh yeah. So NFL receivers coach told me, who I caught up with recently, he said that absolutely would not try him at tight end right now. He would wait. He said there's something in his body you can't teach. Size is the term, and he'd want this guy to come in as a receiver. Now, of course, it depends on your needs at each position, because some teams we've talked to don't think he runs well enough to play receiver going forward. It just depends on how each club looks at him. But I just thought that this guy who I spoke was insistent. He goes, no, I want him. Because if we drafted him, he goes, I would implore our general manager to let us play him at receiver first before we decide what we're going to do with him. Should be third day, fourth or fifth round. Could sneak into third. We always use this phrase: it only takes one team to like a player or love a player.
Mm-hmm.
But some coaches don't like him at all because he's too big. You don't think he's fluid enough, but he's interesting. He's an interesting player. And the Eagles have tried these hybrid. Well, I shouldn't say receivers. They've tried these former quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
They tried the kid who now is with the Giants, who, boy, was he doing well before he got hurt. He's Tyree Jackson. Oh boy, they really got it. It's too bad he got hurt. Go ahead.
Yeah, they had another kid though before that who I also think played for the Cardinals, Hakeem
Butler. Yeah,
Hakeem Butler. Wasn't he another tall, lengthy?
Yeah, they brought him in here as a receiver, but I don't know if he did. But the big one is who you mentioned him, the guy from UMass. What's the kid's name?
Not UMass. Do you mean Afani Moma?
That's it. Yeah. Where did he go to school? Where did he go to school?
I don't remember. Maybe
I thought he went to UMass.
It could be UMass. Yeah.
But what happened was his 40 day or pro day, whatever the hell was his 40 day. His pro day workout was so great that the Eagles couldn't help themselves. Was it with Chip?
It was with Chip. Yeah.
Right. They could not believe how well he moved. And you know what happened? He didn't make it here. He also wound up tearing his ACL with the Cardinals. He actually stayed with the Cardinals. It got a very small extension, but he did well enough to stay in the league.
Yeah.
So the league is always looking for these guys who are so tall, who somehow could. And now by the way, Jacob Harris is that guy. The Rams played him at receiver and tight end. And as we understand, the Eagles are going to play him at receiver. And watch this kid in training camp, folks. He's a former 4th rounder for the Rams in 21.
Yep. Can also punt, as we've talked about on the podcast.
There you go.
Yeah. So, by the way, Boston College from Moma. So you were close, right, Church?
Okay.
Thank you. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Another wide receiver. This is not the same. He's not a tight end. He's certainly a wide receiver, but he's a big one. He was supposed to have a visit with the Eagles. It did not happen. But Brendan Rice from USC, who of course is the son of Jerry Rice, had 12 touchdowns at him last year.
Wow.
Catching passes from Caleb Williams on I think it was 12 touchdowns on like 48 catches. So that's a pretty good ratio.
The knock on him is a degree of stiffness. He probably will, because though he's 6'2" and 3/8", which is tall, He's probably going to have to play inside, is what we've been told. So we'll see.
Yep.
See. By the way, the Eagles have a depth issue at receiver for the future. They have nothing. They really. They've got 2 guys on 1-year deals. We know about their injury histories, especially Campbell's. Their depth is really poor for the future. Now, their hope is Ngata, Jacob Harris, Watkins, Shaquan Davis. One of these guys emerges as a backup outside receiver. But right now, they really need to address that position. I know they got plenty of needs, particularly on defense, but it would be nice if they drafted and developed a backup receiver.
Yes, I would agree. Another position that they've been trying to address depth, but also for the future is tight end. We've talked about this. Now, the one that really intrigues me, not my guy out of Penn State, Theo Johnson. He is intriguing. He is a great athlete, and the Eagles did talk to him at the combine, interviewed him formally. But from Texas's tight end, Jatavian Sanders, who has both had a formal interview and a Zoom meeting. Andrew DeCecco reported this, a Zoom meeting with the Eagles. So that's 2 different ways that they've talked to Jatavian Sanders, who is seen as a very fierce vertical weapon at the tight end position, Adam.
Yeah, he was a Senior Bowl guy. He is supposed to go, we're told, late 2, early 3 in a draft that is very weak overall tight end. Your guy, Theo Johnson from Penn State, could sneak into the 2nd round. My favorite guy is Ben Sinnott, Kansas State, who should go early 3, but Sanders could run. See, the thing is, he's kind of undersized. And that's, when I say undersized, he's not like this super big tight end like Jared Wiley. He's a wide tight end.
Right.
So he's an athletic move guy. So it's going to come down to how clubs see him, but the dude can move. Yeah, he's under 6'4", 6'3", 7'8", only 245. Only 245, but he can move. I mean,
well, you better be able to move if you're a 245-pound tight end.
Yeah. And I'm not, people are knocking him for a 4.69 40. I mean, come on. He plays way faster than that. He's just smaller. That's all.
Right. And then the last tight end, again, this is from Andrew, having a Zoom meeting with the Eagles, is Jaheim Bell from Florida State. So obviously the Eagles putting in a little work there at that position.
Oh, he is my boy, Brett Whitefield from fantasypoints.com, who's phenomenal doing the draft. He loves this kid. He came on our fantasy show on Sirius with John Hansen and I, and he just raved about this guy. Brett's a really good evaluator. He's I don't want to say he's a contrarian. He sees it a little differently. And he's another one. 6'2" even, just 240. But he's long. He can run. The tape is way better than he's been given credit for. He's another guy, 4.61, moves way better than that. So what this is, I've said this for 7 years, 6 years, whatever the hell it is on our show. Eagles see things differently. A lot of the guys, now not all of them, they have a high percentage of guys being drafted who've either visited or, by the way, since COVID, clubs have a much higher. They're allowed to have Zooms with more than 30 players. Like you only get 30 pre-draft visits to your complex. So it really seems to me, with the time that they're spending with these undersized tight ends, that maybe this is a Kellen Moore thing. Maybe he likes those guys. By the way, he coached Jared Everett last season with the Chargers.
Hey, great point there. Very good point.
Who knows?
Yeah, as far as day 3 guys that play either wide receiver or tight end, the one that's interesting is, because we know that they're looking at, as you mentioned, 3rd, 4th. You want special teams, slot guy, Aeneas. I think I'm pronouncing it correct. It's either Aeneas or Aeneas Smith from Texas A&M. He had a visit with the Eagles. I mean, he's got slot written all over him. He's 5'9", 180. He's also returned punts, and he's even played some running back at A&M. So that to me, when you're 5'9", 180, you're looked at as a slot / returner, which is usually a day 3 guy.
Or Z receiver at best. But yeah.
Right.
And who is the guy that Andrew interviewed from Florida State? Was it Florida State this past week?
It wasn't Florida. What, from Slippery Rock? Or
No. He had a
okay.
kid last weekend. I'm drawing a blank.
Wide receiver?
Yeah, maybe it's not Florida State, but I thought it was a receiver.
Well, he did have a receiver from Slippery Rock named Kyle
Sheets. I remember him. Right.
He had
right,
the Monmouth running back, Jaden Sheridan.
Okay.
who, by the way, Darren Sproles, if we were going to talk about day 3, and we weren't going to really get into running backs, but Darren Sproles went out and talked to Jaden Sheridan at his pro day. So I thought that was really interesting. That's a name to watch there on day 3.
See, running back, because they want to take Ty Davis price are really high on, and they gave him decent guaranteed money. I just don't see them addressing the running back position. Now, should they really count on it?
Mm-hmm.
No. Oh no, the kid that he interviewed was Jayshon Jones.
Oh, the Maryland kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was really interesting. And he talked about Stefon Diggs, of course. So that's receiver and tight end.
Mm-hmm.
We talked. That's it for off. We'll talk more about these more. Well, we'll have more names for you, but these are the guys we know the Eagles have had interest in.
Definitely. All right, we'll move on to defensive prospects. Before we do that, whether your resolution is to save money, eat better, or stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all 3. Say hello to your most delicious year yet with fresh ingredients and chef-crafted recipes at a price you'll love, delivered right to your door. So you've resolved to actually sit down and eat dinner around the table. What do you do about those nights when your schedule is jam-packed? That's when you turn to HelloFresh's lineup of quick and easy meals, including their 15-minute recipes designed to help minimize mealtime stress. Every time we eat a HelloFresh meal, whether it's quick and easy or one of their other types, we're blown away by the freshness, taste, and overall quality. So many great options, whether you're like chicken, whether you're like meat, whether you like shrimp, whether you're a vegetarian. So many great options, so many great deals. Here's their latest deal. If you go to HelloFresh.com/EaglesFree and use that code EaglesFree, you get free breakfast for life. That's 1 breakfast item per box while you have an active subscription. Free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/EaglesFree. Just using that promo code EaglesFree. It's all one word in lowercase EaglesFree. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right, Adam, let's say the Eagles do what we might have predicted them to do and take offensive line in round 1. Then, on those 2 picks in round 2, you're looking to rebuild that defense, get some young building blocks, might be an edge rusher, might be a linebacker, a corner, safety. Let's talk defensive line, edge mostly, because I find there to be a lot of pretty decent athletic trait guys that'll be available day 2 and day 3, and the Eagles have certainly done a lot of work on them as they usually do. One of the guys is Western Michigan's Marshawn Nealand. Again, he had a combine interview with them. He was supposed to have a 30 visit. I believe that also got canceled, but this is a guy who's considered a very good athlete and has a lot of upside.
Yeah, and with canceled visits, there are a number of reasons. Sometimes the player stayed a second day with the club, or weather-related, illness. There are a number of reasons. I don't read anything into it.
Agree.
If it was canceled, they had at least had interest in him. So the workouts mean absolutely nothing. Just so you know, the position coaches some will work out 40 players. I read absolutely nothing. There's absolutely no indication of teams going to draft a player because they worked him out. There's more of an indication when they bring him in for a visit, because clubs, if you look at, and we have all the Eagles visits, we'll go over more of them next week, but they were done, by the way, yesterday. When they had to be out of the buildings by midnight. But there's a trend. The Eagles are big on this. If they've had 12 receivers in, they're drafting a receiver, because if that becomes the position they visit the most, I'm telling you, going back, I used to track these more than anyone in the country. Clubs just do that. If it's whatever position they visit with the most, doesn't always happen, but more often than not, they wind up drafting that player usually pretty high, because they're telling you that they have an issue. That's why they keep big in that position. It's pretty obvious.
Right. So that's Marshawn Nealand. A guy that Andrew DeCecco wrote about, Jeremiah Washburn, who coaches the Eagles outside the Sam linebacker / edge role.
Yeah.
He went out to Colorado State to work out Muhammad Kamara, a guy who is undersized but is considered very violent and explosive. Violent hands, I should say, and explosive. So the Eagles are putting in their work on the edge rushers, as they always do.
Yep. So what happens is what they'll do is they'll take Washburn's. So let's say he's a 3rd or 4th round pick, Kamara from Colorado State. They'll have that in their file they'll be able to look at that. Howie will, when he makes the call, he'll already know about the player, but he'll use that background information. That's what it's done. It's for background information, particularly when they draft them. And also, by the way, Andy Reid told me this. They take pre-draft visit information. Although there's a good chance they won't draft a player, they will have that video of that guy in their building and how the interaction was. So with Washburn, you could tape the private workouts, I believe, although I know they're not done. You know, you can't work anyone out of your complex unless it's a local pro day. But I'm pretty certain they could tape the private workouts. But nevertheless, even if they're not allowed to, they have what it looked like because they worked the guy out and they talked to him and interacted with him. That stuff's important when it won't indicate they're going to draft a player, but they'll use that information for background. That stuff's really important. If they decide they're going to draft a player, they have that interaction, and they'll Washburn, I'm sure, because remember, you know, he was a personnel director for the Eagles at one point. They'll have him in the draft room, and they'll be able to look at him and talk to him if they're going to actually draft the guy. That becomes really important.
Yeah, 100%. Just curious because we're on day 2, guys, but we did mention Laiatu Latu and the medicals, and Chop Robinson's a very undersized guy who had, I think he had very few sacks his last year at Penn State. In fact, Adisa Isaac, who's also a eligible prospect, I believe had more sacks. But in any of your intel, is there a shot because of his lack of size that he slips into the second round?
Oh yeah, he's a top 40 pick for sure. But yeah, sure. It's. I mean, I've mocked him to the Niners. I've been mocking him 25 to 32.
Right.
So on your point, you know, you're drafting him on ups. You're drafting on projection. You know, based on his college numbers, it's not there for him to be a first round pick. But it's not about the first year. The draft has been, always will be for the future, and it's like with and it didn't work out with Jamin Davis. Clubs drafted him on total upside. He didn't have the production to draft him in the first round. The Commandos, like many teams, thought by year 3 he could be a really good player. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. But it's always about projection, not the intermediate future. It's all about projecting down the road. What will this guy be?
Sure. Good stuff. All right. We'll move on from so Nealand and Kamara are guys day 2. There is a defensive tackle, Christian Boyd from Northern Iowa, who was supposed to, again, have a visit. That one, I believe we heard got canceled. So as far as day 3 guys, there's one edge that really stands out. Because again, Andrew wrote about this one. Jalix Hunt from Houston Christian. He had a pre-draft visit with the Eagles. He's fascinating, Adam, because he started his career as a safety at Cornell and ends up as an edge rusher, high upside, traits-laden edge rusher at Houston Christian. I'm going to raise my hand and admit to you, I did not know that Houston Christian existed until I heard of this guy, much like I didn't know about Lenore Ryan until Kyle Duggar came out for the draft.
It's funny you say that because when I got the list of players who would be available back in February, I'm like, Houston Christian, is that an online school? What is that? I you know, kind of like University of Phoenix or something.
Yes.
I'm like, what is this? You know, Lenore Ryan, like it's another one. Like, where the hell is that? I've never heard of this school.
I still don't know where it is.
I don't either. I have no idea. But it's pretty good scouting by the Patriots. Holy smokes, he just got an extension. But yeah, well, before we move on to off-ball linebacker, he's a very interesting player. And Hunt did start his career at Cornell. And obviously the Eagles liked him. They had him for a pre-draft visit. That's pretty interesting.
It is, because I believe he's sort of a projected like 6th or 7th round guy. I mean, we're not talking about a guy who's going to most likely be picked anytime in, you know, early in this draft or even mid. Yeah.
So again, he's supposed to be, you know, 4th, 5th round pick. But hey, listen, who knows? Hey, Vic Fangio, they've never worked with Fangio before. Maybe Vic sees him through their staff as sort of a hybrid player. That would be interesting. Who knows?
Right. All right, let's move on to off-ball linebacker, because I'll just tell you right now, I would be stunned. I know how many guys the Eagles have signed at this position, right? We know they signed Devin White. We know they signed Oren Burks. We know they signed Zach Bohm. We know they got Nakobe Dean. We know they have Ben Van Sumeren. I'd be stunned if they did not take an off-ball linebacker sometime before the end of day 2.
Just remember, who was signed after the season? Nakobe Dean and Ben Van Sumeren, and that's it.
That's it. So I really do think they need a building block at this position, and they have put a lot of work. And listen, if this guy who has taken a visit to them is there at 50, I'd be shocked. But if he's there, Edgerrin Cooper, from his athletic testing, all the measurables, he like screams Eagles linebacker just based on the analytics alone.
He's a stud. I mean, he's just a really good football player. I mean, he's going to go in the second. Eagles had him for a pre-draft visit. Now, will Howie pull the trigger on an off-the-ball linebacker in the second round? Doesn't have a great history of doing it as early as the second round. Has a very small history of doing it. I'd have to look up who made the call on Michael Kendricks. There's probably Andy back then, but nevertheless, they don't have a history of doing it. And again, the draft is about projection. It's down the line. You make a good point. They have a lot of inside linebackers, but they don't have anyone really for the future. Nakobe hasn't. I know he's going to start this season, but he hasn't stayed healthy, and they need a future at that position. So yeah, it wouldn't be a surprise at all. Now, I'm not saying they can't draft a guy in the third round, and we'll Trotter. I don't know if Jeremiah Trotter Jr. goes to the. I think he's more round 3 than 2 because he's a smaller guy.
Mm-hmm.
They had Trevin Wallison from Kentucky.
Right.
Also, could be a third round pick. So I could see third round. I could see early as the third round.
Which means the Eagles will probably have to maneuver a little bit, because they maybe trade down with one of those second round picks, because I believe they don't have a third round pick. They gave it up for Pickett. But listen, you know how he's going to be wheeling and dealing throughout the draft. So I agree with you. If it's third round, you're looking at a Trevin Wallace, who they brought in for a visit, or a Jeremiah Trotter Jr., which I think would be a great story if it happens for the Eagles. A guy who had a combine interview was Jalen Ford from Texas. And then a guy who also had a canceled 30 visit, Cedric Gray out of North Carolina. So those are really like your day 2 guys. Now I'll give you a day 3 guy who I watched. Did I see him in person? I think I saw him. Jordan McGee from Temple. Eagles were at his pro day, and the linebackers coach, Bobby King, led the workout at his pro day. So I think that's a name to keep an eye on.
Just so you know, the Eagles have a 1-1, 2 2s, no 3, as you said, a 4, 3 5s, and 6 currently. Now, obviously, if they make a trade right after we tape this, which, by the way, they've had a couple things happen in our 7 years where we literally taped it. We dropped at 6 a.m. Eastern, and like 3 hours later, they made a trade, did something where like people were like, what did you tape this 3 days ago? No, we dropped it, and they did it afterwards. Relax.
It happens.
Yeah,
no, that is my biggest fear for this podcast, though.
Of course. But anyway, no, but and then the kid from, is it Spates? Omar Spates?
I don't know if it's Spates or Spites, but Omar Spates from LSU. Yeah, no, he's a local guy, so he was able to go to the local pro day, even though he went to LSU. We're looking at maybe like 6th, 7th round, maybe rookie free agent.
Yeah, definitely a day 3 guy. And I would agree with your point on this, on off-the-ball linebacker. I'd be stunned if they didn't draft one in this, if they didn't select one in this draft. And they really need to it's the defense where offensively they're pretty set for the future, except for just depth at receiver with younger players. But man, they need some developmental guys. So to improve their depth, their young depth. That is definitely a problem for this team, particularly in the back end.
All right, we'll finish it off with defensive backs. Before we do that, we're going to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. There's a lot of names here. We're not going to have time to go through all of them because the Eagles have paid a lot of attention. But, the ones that really jump out, Adam, Max Melton is a local kid. He was at the local pro day. He went to Rutgers. The Eagles have seen him at his pro day. Christian Parker, the defensive backs coach, personally worked him out. He was at the Senior Bowl. He is probably a top 50 to 55 pick.
Top 40. Yeah, I think he goes
40 maybe. Yeah, that's a fair point. And if
his family's ridiculous. The mom, the dad, his dad Gary played at Rutgers. Mom she did sports. I think she was doing track at Rutgers, and his brother Bo is with the Packers. He's got another brother who played at Delaware State. It's a pretty amazing story. Had one of the best off seasons of any player for this draft, and he's a great kid. I mean, it'd be great. It certainly see the thing is, and Cosell talked about this. Some teams may look at him as a nickel. He clearly could play outside because he's played it. That's really where he's played majority of his career, but he could certainly play inside because he's played it. So we'll see what happens with him. Rakestraw, the problem with him, he should go in the second round. I don't think he'll get out of the second round. He's very competitive and physical. I just don't think he runs well enough for the Eagles.
Yeah, that's possible. And he's not big enough per se to be a nickel. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they see him that way. I don't think it's a position he's played a whole lot. So he could be one of those ones that just the body type isn't there for them. Christian Parker was also at his pro day as well. Checked him out and also talked to his teammate who is supposed to be, I think, a day 3 guy. His name is escaping me. It's one of those hyphenated names. I can probably find it in a second. But
Drain.
Yeah,
Abrams
that's
Drain.
the one.
Yeah. He's another interesting guy who's a day 3 guy, corner.
Yeah, Chris Abrams Drain. Yeah.
Right. I saw Missouri play a lot, man. They were explosive at offense, and they had some really good defensive players. Robinson, of course, is going to go in the late first. And a couple other guys. I believe Cam Richardson his full name is DeCameron Richardson. It's by DCAM at Mississippi State. He's a 3rd or 4th round guy, we're told. I believe he visited, if I'm not mistaken. I heard he was on their list. I assume he made the visit. We just know that they like him because he's long. He could run. He's I hate this term, moving up draft boards. It's usually a fallacy, but he's a guy who's had a lot of juice this offseason. And then to check, Andrew had a visit from Jerry and Joe. He said the Eagles had a visit with Jerry and Jones.
Yeah, day 3 guy, late rounder. Went to Florida State, cornerback there. So the Eagles are going to throw some darts probably at these positions, and this would be a guy who went to a big school, a lot of experience there. So that would be corners. Safety. Oh, by the way, Andrew Phillips, we didn't mention him. We both saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he was really impressive. He went to Kentucky. He visited, I believe he visited. Yeah, he visited the Eagles too, and he's kind of a day 2 guy, definitely. I thought he had a really nice Senior Bowl. So probably 3rd round, maybe sneaks into late 2nd round, but Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. And then as far as safeties, Adam, they've done a lot of combine interview. When they were at the combine, they pretty much talked to any safety who was pretty good. And that includes Minnesota's Tyler Nubin, who will probably, my intel is he'll be a 2nd round pick.
Yep.
Jaden Hicks from Washington State, Kalen Bullock from USC, James Williams, Miami, and Malik Mustafa, Wake Forest. I mean, these guys are going to vary on where they go, but all of them formerly met with the Eagles at the combine.
Cam Kitchens, who could sneak into the 3rd round. He's not as highly graded as I was told, or like in January, I was told a little bit stuff, and it wound up as coaches and front office people got through the tape. They didn't think he was as good as I thought he was, or what I was initially told, but should go 3rd or 4th round. Before we get out of here, my thinking is, because I know what we've heard is for over the years, they wanted to address the position 2 or 3 times, but the board got blown up. Certain things happened. They traded out, didn't have an extra pick, whatever the case may be. So we'll see what they do, but I'm agreeing with you. I have a hard time imagining that if they don't have a 3rd round pick, at least that they don't trade and we'll talk more about this next week, but I still think they wind up getting more picks somehow because they need so much help on defense. And this is not a team. They're not in a rebuild. They're in a retooling, specifically on defense. It's not a great division. The odds makers, by the way, have the Eagles and Cowboys with 10.5 wins. So that division's wide open. Since 04, this division's definitely wide open because no one's repeated since 04. So let's see what happens.
Definitely. All right, last 2 names. Andrew did interviews with them on our platform. Safety out of Utah, Sione Vaki. Joe Casper, the safeties coach, went to his pro day. This guy played both safety and running back at Utah. Also did some receiver drills. So that's a day 3 guy with a lot of analytical tests that the Eagles will like. And Sean Stevens from Ferris State. He is Joey Porter's nephew and Joey Porter Jr.'s cousin. Went to Ferris State. He had a 30 visit with the Eagles. So that finishes it off for D-backs and all the other guys that we mentioned who we look forward to seeing go on day 2 and day 3. And hey, they might be Eagles. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.